Well, the prison service isn't alone in facing a difficult December. More than 10,000 ambulance workers have voted to strike in the run-up to Christmas. It's the first walkout in 30 years. Paramedics and call handlers are among staff across 9 trusts taking industrial action over a proposed 4% pay award. The announcement comes despite warnings from the NHS that strikes will leave ambulance response times incredibly stretched. In more winter walkouts, Royal Mail workers, university lecturers and sixth form teachers have all manned picket lines today. Meanwhile, nurses are also planning to strike on the 15th and 20th of December in an historic move for the profession. And let's not even mention the railways. I am really worried about what is going to happen. The NHS is already at breaking point. We're seeing ambulances queuing outside hospitals. People are waiting hours and hours to be seen. We have a nursing crisis. We don't have enough beds. There's no capacity. We don't have enough doctors. I'm actually wondering if this is the straw that breaks the back of the NHS.
I think it's broken already.
Well, I do too. And actually,
how do you define broken?
But again, we need to look back at, is it about money? No, absolutely it isn't. We're spending 10.2% of our GDP on it, but it's about actually throughput. It's actually getting people seen. And my worry is that if you have a heart attack already, you will be dead before you reach hospital because you will not get an ambulance. And this is only going to make stuff worse.
So here's a reality with the NHS. It was set up so that there wasn't a chasm between the health outcomes for rich and poor, so that everybody, whatever their background, should be able to have the same operations, should be able to have the same healthcare. The reality now is that the private healthcare industry is booming. And so we already have that divide, and it is growing by the day, where anyone who can afford it, and I'm not just talking wealthy people, people who actually can't really afford it but are putting all their life savings into it, are of course naturally trying to find a way to jump what is a completely unacceptable queue for treatment that will get them out of pain and misery, which only, the longer they wait, they only get into more pain and the operations are less likely to succeed.
And actually the ambulance issue is a little microcosm of the greater issues with inequality, because just listening to you saying, if you have to wait for an ambulance, you'll be dead. So if you've got the money for a taxi, or if you've got your own car,
100%.
which immediately puts you in a slightly different wealth bracket to other people, you've got more of a chance of living.
And even the call handlers are saying, get in a car, go to the hospital, do not wait for an ambulance. In Suffolk, where I live, you wouldn't see an ambulance for hours because, of course, it's really rural. There's no way you would see an ambulance.
Fire engines are now going to more, as first responders to people who've had heart attacks and strokes than they are doing fires in this country currently. The system is completely messed up, but I can only lay the blame at the government's door. Like, I know the NHS is being overstretched, but even if the ambulance drivers don't go on strike, the ambulances are still putting up hospitals and having no beds for the patients regardless.
100%. But we need to, I think, declare a national emergency on this and say that we need to do something now. Bringing in the army is probably the right thing, actually, right now.
Yeah.
Because we have to actually do something and do it quickly.
Yeah, but it's not just the NHS. You know, that whole VT showed that it isn't just the health service. We can, you can dismantle the NHS all you like. You can't dismantle all of those other service areas that we desperately need in the UK. It's not simple enough to go, well, we need to look into privatisation. Look what happened to Royal Mail when it was privatised. Things do go down the pan when they're privatised too.
Well, that's not true, actually, because also, in terms of Royal Mail, they're now making a loss, an operating loss, or they will this year. But that's also because the way that we engage with the Royal Mail has changed. We don't send as many parcels.
If the government had struck a deal with Amazon...
Carry on.
Then if the government has owned Royal Mail still and struck a deal with Amazon, then the Royal Mail would be used constantly.
Yeah, I mean, but again, in terms of, I don't think you can lay the blame at privatisation, but what I do think is you need to have increased efficiency. I think these businesses are changing all the time. But also, again, people are really struggling, of course, because of the cost of living crisis. We've seen inflation. So how do you square all of that? And particularly if a business is losing money, they're going to have to do something. But, paying managers to sack and paying managers big bonuses to sack people, I don't think is really acceptable.
What I would love to see in the run-up to the next general election, and I know I'm living in cloud cuckoo land, is the main parties, SNP in Scotland and the Lib Dems.
I know what you're going to say. And
and the Labour Party came together and said, this is more important than party politics. We are going to put down our swords. We're going to sit round a table and we're going to thrash out how to fix the NHS.
100%.
And we're not going to campaign in the general election because we're all going to go into that election with a joint policy.
And I have called for this for a really long time. Depoliticise the whole thing. Have a 25-year strategy. This is what we're going to do. This is what we aim to achieve. these are the
And we'll,
outcomes.
and we'll be
do it
sitting
on
here.
care for
But
the
in 20
elderly,
years,
would
we'll still
they?
be here.
Yes, exactly. We'll be
Unless you
sitting
need an
here.
ambulance.
Yeah, in which case you won't be.
be.
No, exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be great, Daisy, but sadly I just don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, they didn't do it on care for the elderly, did they? There were repeated attempts to do a cross-party kind of thing on care for the elderly, social care, and it just didn't happen. Because one party or another cannot resist having a go.
Yeah.
And of
Which
course,
is why politicians are all annoying.
Yeah.
All of them.
David excluded.
oh, thank you
You're a
very
doctor
much.
as well.
That's very kind. Oh, good. I win twice. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed.